Okay, it being 6 o'clock on November 15th, 2021, I'll call this meeting of the Chelmsford Select Board to order. Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we kick off public service announcements, if anyone is here for the storage license public hearing for Aggregate Industries, the only action we're taking tonight is to continue that until our next meeting on November 29th. The parties need a little more time before we continue that. So I just want to say that as a courtesy, so you don't need to wait around. Ken, you want to start with our public service announcements?
Sure. The first announcement we have is the COVID booster clinic. And so that's for November 18th, 2021, 4 to 7 p.m. at the Chelmsford Senior Center. And they currently only have the Moderna. Registration is required, pre-register. And there's a link on the town website, so you can go to chelmsfordma.gov and follow the link. Masks are required. The clinic is only open to those 18 years or older. Please bring your insurance card and your COVID vaccination card, and be sure to wear a short-sleeve shirt.
Go ahead.
The next announcement we have is the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee.
There's 2 flu clinics, Ken.
Oh.
Yeah, flu in, flu shot.
Hold on, I got them then. You want oh, I'm sorry.
There's another one that I don't seem to have called up on
I
my
got
computer.
it. The second announcement is a flu vaccine clinic. Get your flu shots November 18th, 2021, 4 to 7, ages 19 years and older at the Chelmsford Senior Center. Registration in this one is recommended. Again, you can follow the link at chelmsfordma.gov. Masks are required. The clinic, unfortunately, is only for people 19 years or older. The high dose will be available for those 65 years and older. Bring your insurance card, and again, wear a short sleeve shirt.
That's not it. Okay.
The next announcement we have is the Vinyl Square Action Committee. It's a transportation improvement concept plan. Public presentation input session will be this Thursday, November 18th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. And they're at the town offices here at 204 Billricker Road, Chelmsford. You can link virtually. The link is on the town website. If you go to the calendar for Thursday night, you'll see the link there. And they're looking for input on the final concept plan for the eventual Mass DOT improvement project. And our last announcement for the night is Sunday, December 5th, 2021. Chelmsford celebrates the holidays. Mark your calendar.
We have Vivian here.
Oh.
Yeah, you can do it.
No, go ahead. I didn't realize that's why you're here.
It's all good.
I was going to give you my full announcing voice. Come on in.
The prairie dog in me. I just pop up out of nowhere. This is Vivian Merrill coming at you from the Holiday Decorating Committee. To finish the announcement, Ken started. Like everything else COVID related, we did not have the prelude last year, so we're resuming it this year. The event will run December 5th. It will go from 4 to 6 p.m. Santa will arrive at 4. Instead of the kids climbing up on Santa this year, we're going to have a little bench in front of him so that you can take your pictures and still respect the social distancing guidelines. Also helps if it rains that night, because that way Santa don't get all muddy. 5 o'clock, the lights go on. We will have the usual free goodies, kind of like a scavenger hunt, because they're kind of all over the place. We got the chowder and the cocoa and popcorn and things like that. Several local businesses will be doing their own events. Most notably, the Artisans Exchange will be doing a whole bunch of different little activities. And we'll have a local realtor in front of the Chelmsford Center of the Arts doing their thing. What else? We will have the free photos with Santa also available for free download on the Chelmsford Dog Association website. Another new thing this year is the return of the Gingerbread Village. That will be at All Saints Church. That's going to be on December 4th, which is actually the day before, as well as December 5th, so everybody can go in there and check that out. We'll still have Piney the Talking Tree. If anyone's interested in volunteering or doing a performance, because we have a whole little dance floor type setup on the common itself, we are actively looking for groups that want to do some kind of a performance. And this Saturday, the 20th, we'll be actually doing the decorating on the common, so if anybody needs to hightail it into Christmas spirit, come on down and help us hang lights and things. If you have any questions or need more information, you can text me or call me at 978-973-9596. Any donations you want to do, they'd be gratefully accepted. You can talk to Colleen Stansfield down in the planning department. She can more or less direct you on that. And if you have any questions or you think I missed anything, fire away. Got nothing?
No, thank you,
I'm out.
Vivian.
All right, take care. Have a good meeting.
Okay. That brings us to the public input session of our agenda. Is there anyone who would like to speak during public input?
Did you cover the Princeton, the Princeton Street proposed? There's no flyer for it, but we just wanted to help spread the word on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang tight. You want to do the one other,
Yeah, 255.
it's the bullet,
Yeah,
250.
it's just the bullet, just,
What?
Okay.
we don't have a
You want to
flyer
handle
for
it,
it.
Paul?
Sure. Yeah, there's, obviously, there's a lot of concern, and including even later discussion at tonight's meeting and at the planning board regarding the redevelopment of the former UMass Lowell West Campus at 255 Princeton Street. The developer has made arrangements to put on a public presentation and hear input and discussion on November 30th at 7 p.m. at the Chelmsford High School Performing Arts Center. So again, it's just another way to get information out and also allow the community to learn more and exchange about the project, so.
Okay.
would help. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I skipped over that. Okay, now we're at public input.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the Select Board, Mr. Town
Excuse me,
Manager.
we just need your name and address
Sure.
for the record.
My name is Rob Albon. I live at 1 Driftwood Drive in Chelmsford. And I'm also the president of the Chelmsford Firefighters Local 1839. I'd like to make a brief statement regarding the Fire Station Committee. I'd like to start by expressing our gratitude on behalf of the Firefighters Union Local 1839, specifically to Select Chair Virginia Crocker-Timmons, Town Manager Mr. Paul Cohen, and Chelmsford Fire Chief Chief Gary Ryan, for the willingness to sit on this committee with an objective approach to make critical decisions which will determine the Chelmsford Fire Department operates in the future. As far as the committee, for the sake of fairness and transparency regarding the selection of potential candidates, the Chelmsford Firefighters Local 1839 will select from the same pool of candidates as the Select Board, using the same information that was provided by all candidates, which can be found on the town website. We will notify the Select Board, Town Manager, Fire Chief, and the union-appointed candidate by Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. Again, thank you, and we look forward to working with all of you in an effort to better serve our residents in Chelmsford. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Does anyone else want to speak during public input? I'm not seeing any, so we'll move to committee vacancies, Ken.
So for committee vacancies, as of November 15th, 2021, the Arts and Technology Education Fund Committee has one 3-year term. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee has one unexpired 3-year term and one 3-year term. The CCA Advisory Committee has 2 seats available. They are 1-year terms. The Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee has one 1-year term. Commissions on Disability is looking to fill one unexpired 3-year term. Community Action Program Committee is looking to fill 3 1-year terms. The Council on Aging, one unexpired 3-year term, one 3-year term, and 5 associate member positions are all available. Cultural Council, 2 3-year terms. The Holiday Decorating Committee is a 1-year term. Parade Committee, all applicants are welcome to their 1-year terms, and they end each July of each year. Public Celebrations Committee, 5 1-year terms. Recycling Committee is looking to fill one 1-year term. Tree Committee has available one unexpired 3-year term and one 3-year term. If you're interested in serving on a town board or committee, please complete an online application available on the town website. For more information, you can contact the town manager's office here, 50 Billerica Road, Chelmsford, Mass., or by email at tmoffice@chelmsfordma.gov, or you can call on the phone, 978-250-5202.
Thank you, Ken. And tonight we have a guest speaker for the Council on Aging to provide the public a little more information about that committee.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Town Manager, good evening. My name's Fred Brusso. I chair the Chelmsford Council on Aging Board, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight about a brief overview. The three topics I'll cover briefly are our goals and functions, our membership and meetings, and our organizational structure. As for our goals and functions, we are primarily an advisory board. As per our policy and procedures document, we have 3 enduring goals and several enduring functions, and I'll just go down through them briefly. The goals: identify the needs of residents aged 60 and over, promote and support programs to assist older residents, advocate for older residents at the local, state, and federal levels. Our functions: establish, support, evaluate services for older residents, provide information, referral, advocacy, and outreach services, work closely with the Friends of the Senior Center, be cognizant of state and federal legislation and programs regarding older residents, and work closely with the Director of Human Services to implement those functions and to ensure the effective operation and utilization of the Senior Center. Membership in meetings: we're authorized 11 voting members. We currently have 9. We're also authorized 5 associate non-voting members. We currently have none. And both types of members have 3-year staggered terms. As far as our meetings, we meet monthly on the second Wednesday at 9 a.m. And all our meetings are posted as per the Massachusetts open meeting law. Our organizational structure: we have 3 offices, a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. We have 5 standing committees: a nominating committee, a finance committee, a program committee, a building committee, and a legislative and advocacy committee. We also have 3 subcommittees: capital planning, marketing, and transportation. If anyone is interested in getting more information about our board, please contact Debbie Siriani, who's the Senior Center Director, at 978-251-0533, or myself at 978-256-3278. Again, thank you for the opportunity for the overview. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Nope.
Okay,
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Fred.
Fred.
Okay, that takes us to public hearings. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing for the storage license for Aggregate Industries, 16 Oak Street, to be continued to November 29th, 2021.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Okay, and that brings us to licenses. The first one is for Elmo's Flower and Garden. Is there anyone here representing Elmo's? Okay, I don't see any. Discussion on this one.
No, I just like to, this is a license we get every year, and we background check them and everything comes back, so. So if you want, I'll make a motion that we approve the roadside vendor's license for the sale of Christmas trees, wreaths, and kissing balls at 55 Graniteville Road for Elmo's Flower and Garden Center to operate from November 22nd to December 22nd, 2021.
I second the motion.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. The next roadside license is for Central Congregational Church, and I'm going to recuse myself from this one.
It's the same
Probably
thing.
cover it before she gets out the door. Yeah, so this is the same type of license. They're looking to sell Christmas trees and wreaths at 1 Worthing Street. And same, this is several years in a row that they've done it with the background check and so forth. So, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the roadside vendor license for the Central Congregational Church to operate from November 26th to December 23rd, 2021, selling Christmas trees as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
4-0. One abstention.
Thanks. Should announce that for the people at home.
I'm here for you.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay, and the last license is the one-day alcoholic beverages license for the Armenian Church. Is there anyone from the church here? Okay,
Again, it's the same situation, multiple years in a row. Never had a problem. So with that, I'll make, what's that?
Multiple times each year, even.
Yeah. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve a one-day all alcohol beverages license for the banquet to be held on January 29, 2022 at the St. Martin and Armenian Church at 180 Old Westford Road.
I'll second the motion.
motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Okay. Paul, that brings us to reports and presentations.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We have our town accountant, Darlene Luce here, and Finance Director John Souza here, and they're here as our real main contact persons for our financial auditors, Powers and Sullivan, and I guess we'll turn it over to John Powers this evening. Presentation.
Thank you, Paul. All right, first off, I'd like to thank Paul and his staff, and John, Darlene, et cetera. Excellent job in getting the audit done. This year went extremely well, even through all the COVID and everything else that we had to go through. It was an unusual year to get audits done, not being here all the time, doing things remotely, but still finding that balance to get everything done, and a lot of cooperation from everybody to get that done. Two reports we're going to discuss tonight. One is the financial statements. And so in the financial statements, we're hired to, in effect, audit your numbers in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And basically what we do is we take the town's financial statements that are required by the Department of Revenue under the accounting, the Uniform Municipal Accounting System, which is what you have to maintain your ledgers on. And then there's a several series of conversions that change things, so your financial statements can be measured against any other community in the nation. So that's generally accepted accounting principles. So you have a budgetary financial statements, which is required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So all 351 communities present their financial statements in the same format that you go into the DOR, get approved, get your tax rate approved. It's how they establish free cash and everything else. That's the foundational piece. And realistically, the way we approach the audit, it's a risk-based approach. We go through and we do a study and evaluation of the system of internal controls under the UMIS basis and the reconciliations that happen on all the finance departments between Treasury, collecting, accounting, et cetera, to make sure there's proper controls and procedures to safeguard the assets of the town. And what we do is, as we go through that, we're not looking for deficiencies or significant deficiencies or weaknesses in internal controls, but if we find them, we're required to report that as part of the presentation. In prior years, we had a couple of minor points relative to that. I'm glad to say that they were all 100% resolved during the last fiscal year into this year. So I think it's a good thing, but unfortunately, there's nothing that we're reporting on from a deficiency standpoint. Reconciliations happen on time. We have no audit adjustments relative to the financial statements. Everything we ask for checked out. We do all kinds of testing as we go through. But like I said, we do risk evaluations as you go through. And the biggest risk you have is, in effect, your cash balances. You know, you realistically, from the operational standpoint, a cash basis accounting for for Massachusetts and how your cash, how you figure out your free cash, et cetera, series of funds as you go through. excellent controls over those, and that's really a big focus, and also in the collection of receivables and how you're presenting that. So I think that's I feel good to give an excellent report relative to that. And then what we do is there's conversion entries that go through as part of this audit, that every year you have to add all these different accounting entries, that the value of your buildings, there's depreciation. So you're reporting on your financial statements in a little bit different format for cities and towns that bring on all these long-term assets and long-term liabilities. Things that are major concerns that are in here relative to your financial statements, not that it's anything you're doing wrong. There's two unfunded liabilities that are large. Your pension liability, you're part of Middlesex Retirement, as you know. And so Middlesex Retirement, as a member of that, you pay assessments to them every year. And realistically, what you have left at the end of the year, you have a liability of $111 million. But that's going to be funded over the next 10 or 15 years as you go through. You're about 53% funded on that, and you're using a lower discount rate at 7.3%. So it's showing a good realistic rate of return that you're giving a true liability of what your liability is. Everybody in Middlesex and pretty much everybody in the Commonwealth in the same partially funded mode. There's a couple of communities, standalone communities, that are 100% funded. They're unique out of the 104 systems. The state's about the same rate in their funding for both the teachers' retirement and the state employee retirement system. But there's a funding mechanism in place that is required to be fulfilled, and it's part of your budget process every year that you have to pay that to Middlesex. And I don't see any significant issues with that. It's just a large number. That's all. And the other one is the other post-employment benefits, and I see Parker here. And Parker, what that piece is, Parker does for you to create that particular liability. And obviously, you have Parker on after us, and he'll explain where you are now. And he may or may not agree with me, but the town is doing an excellent job of funding your liability. As of June 30th, 2021, your liability was $68.4 million, but you also had $17.3 million worth of assets accumulated in your OPEB trust. That is significantly higher than most communities. And you are about 25% funded at this point in time. One of the things that you look at there, that liability doesn't have to be funded. It only has to be reported on GAAP. Your pension liability, there's laws that you need to fund that no later than 2040. The town has taken the stance, and a lot of communities have done that you needed to address this several years ago, and you're actually putting some good money aside on that, and you're also earning some good interest, investment income on that, and it adds to that value. 25% is higher than probably funding is higher than at least 85% of the communities in Massachusetts, so you're doing an excellent job relative to that. But what happens is when you take a look at your financial statements, you look at it, it's going to tell you that your unrestricted net position is $114 million negative. Well, if you add those two liabilities up, they add up to almost $114 million. So you're still in good position. The rating agencies, et cetera, know about this. They take a look at this and they factor that in when they evaluate your credit worthiness. Again, still in pretty good shape. And then they also take a look at your fund balances as you go through. Free cash, even going through the pandemic, this year may or may not be worse with your collections for some of your revolving funds, things like that may not hit there. You did an excellent job last year in keeping your stabilization fund up there and keeping your fund balance intact. At the end of fiscal 21, you had about $9 million worth of fund balance in your budgetary financial statements. It's where kind of free cash comes from. But in addition to that, you had $10.9 million in your general stabilization and $2.7 million in your sewer construction stabilization fund. And when you add all of those up, you know, your reserves, when you take a look at that, is about a little over 17%.
Excuse me 1 second.
Yeah.
If you're in the Zoom room and not speaking, could you please mute, because we're getting feedback through the mics? Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, good. I didn't do anything wrong, right? So, with that, you've got about $23 million worth of funds that are part of your fund balance, and that's kind of how you really measure that at the end of the year. And it's about 17% of your revenues is total. Again, anything over 10% of that is usually considered excellent from a standpoint of rating agencies. So you're still in a strong position depending on what happens during the pandemic as you go through. You have a bunch of enterprise funds also. Most of those are self-supporting, not significant as you go through. It's not even close to being as significant as the general fund. I don't see anything of note. But that's the highlights of the financial statements. I know we don't want to go, I don't think you want to go page by page, is this, Paul, and I think I saw the smile and a no. But if you have any questions on the financials before I go to the schedule of federal awards, I can certainly address that now.
I just have one question. Several times in the report, I noticed a reference to GASB 84. Can you explain what that is and how it might affect us?
Yeah, it's just the Governmental Accounting Standards Boards, and there's the Financial Accounting Standards Boards, which sets the rules nationally for how you have to present your financial statements. Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB 84, sets the rules for governments. The accounting is different. FASB sets that for commercial entities. GASB 84, there was just some new things on how leases and different things were, not the leases, the enterprise, the agency funds and what was considered agency funds before, and it was just some minor things in there, really just a gap change that didn't change much relative to that. It moved some funds from what used to be an agency fund to your special revenue funds, really not that
Oh, okay.
significant.
The way it said it, I
But-
thought it
But
might
because it
affect us.
changed the reporting from last year to this year,
Mhm.
you have to disclose it. And so during that disclosure, even though not significant, a lot of our clients didn't have any changes. They implemented it, and different governments didn't have any changes, so we didn't have to revise your beginning fund balance for some minor things. And again, just, it really didn't, it didn't change much, and it was not significant from an item standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the financials? All right, the next report is the report on examination of the schedule of federal awards. Okay, and so the federal government, if you receive and expend over $750,000 in any one fiscal year, you're required to hire an outside audit firm to do what's called a single audit. So there's compliance requirements in audit programs that the federal government puts out that we need to follow. In effect, we're acting as their agent and reporting in there saying, all right, here's the audit programs, these are the tests we have to do. Now, normally, the school dominates what you get in. You usually get about $2.5 million worth of funds in each year that the school has done in the past and continue to do. Excellent job with special education, school lunch, things like that. And the town really didn't see much other federal grants as you went through. This year was unique because you had the coronavirus relief fund, which you spent about $4.7 million in fiscal year 2021. And so that required a lot of time by Laura to go through, who's my audit manager, to audit those particular grants. And what the single audit requirement does, it says, all right, you get X amount of money, and let's focus on the larger expenditures and cycle different things through each year. So this year we audited as what's called a major program. That whole $4.7 million for the coronavirus, a lot of it through the town, some of it spent through the school, and then the normal $2.5 million worth of school lunch and special education grants that the school gets. No findings, perfect report relative to that, and so our opinions are clean. One of the other things that's going to happen in fiscal year '22, you still have some money left over that you would have spent for the CARES Act, the coronavirus relief, and now you have the recovery funds, which are going, they just sent out, was it back in June, about half of your allocation of what you got. And so we expect all of that to occur in fiscal '22, and you have several years to spend that as you go through that. There's some unique rules on there, and I'm sure you've already had discussions about how to spend the money, where to go, and what you can do. The biggest thing I just say, and what we've been saying to all our clients as we go through, if you have any questions on these, talk to your auditors, because they're the ones that are going to go through and say, okay, we're going to audit that, but we also have to audit for allowability of those particular funds. Now, for all our clients and et cetera, as we go through, really haven't found many problems about what communities are looking to spend their money on. But when you do the revenue replacement, if you go through that calculation, there's some tricky things in there. So make sure if you're using some revenue replacement funds, where you have a lot more flexibility of what you can spend money on, that you get that reviewed up front. And so for most of our clients, what we're doing is we're asking to accelerate the audit, meaning if you do your revenue replacement, let us audit it now and don't wait until after June 30th, 2022, and we come in 7, 8, 9 months later and say, ooh, you made a mistake. You went through this. And that's just one of the recommendations. But an excellent report on this one also.
You said,
Oops, sorry.
you said that we still have a balance left from the CARES funding?
Hey, you might have spent it all. Everybody's usually had a little. The state has allowed and allowed through the end of 12/31, but you had to have everything. Paul, did you have any money left on that, or did you?
Yep, there was a little bit. There was about, we had about $600,000.
Yeah, and so they
Sorry, they won't be able to, Darlene said that we had about $600,000.
Yeah, and so
Does that expire at some point?
It's December 31st, so I just submitted.
Can you get to a mic?
You want to go to the mic?
Just because they can't hear you.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, on the CARES money, we had about $600,000, and I just put in a request for that, and I got approval. Haven't seen the money come in yet, so that's coming in, and then that fund will be clean. But those will be fiscal '22 expenditures, so I'll be, working with the audit firm on those. That'll still be part of that. Like he was talking, that they'll have to show those expenditures and show those invoices and get approval to finish out that grant. And then the other one I think he's probably talking about is the ARPA monies, which will be continued over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Yeah, and again, I expect the CARES to go through. It's excellent you got that $600,000 through, because the state put a limit on that, and a lot of places didn't get things in timely and lost some of their money, but it sounds like you get everything. And so, again, great job for everybody to not lose out on what was rightfully yours from the expenditure standpoint. And the ARPA piece is, all I'm saying is just be careful as you go through to make sure that the audit firms are on top of that as you go through that. Any additional questions on?
No.
Okay. One final thing. I was talking to Paul earlier this year, and you've been a great client and everything else, but I guess there's a bylaw that limits the time that you can have any one auditor. I just want to thank everybody for our time here. I was really upset because you're like the favorite client and close to home and everything else. But I just wanted to thank everybody for the professionalism you exhibited and the way they've treated us over the years. And maybe someday we can come back. And if you do, as you go through this before you hire a new audit firm, if you have any questions on this ARPA and the rest of that stuff, just call us up. I'll get done what you need to do, and, we'll go through that. So
Thank you for all you've done for us, and thank you also for understanding
yeah, and we got plenty to do.
our requirement.
Okay.
So, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Virginia. Take care.
Are we going to Parker now, or?
Yes. Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, Parker Elmore of Odyssey Advisors, who's completed
Is that
a
the right one?
OPEB actuarial audit for the town, is here to present. And again, I want to thank John and Darlene for their work with him to, enable him to do his work in a timely and professional manner. So I'll turn it over to you now, Parker. Good evening.
Thanks for having us out. Let me share a screen here so I can,
Parker, I've got your slides up, which is, it's easier for our television production if you can just have me flip the slides here. Parker, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So I have your slides up. It's easier for our television production if
Okay.
we can just
Yeah,
do it from here.
All right, you can go to slide 2 then. I'm trying to
Yeah.
do it this way, but sure. All right, so I'll give you the quick 30-second overview about our firm. So we've been doing this stuff since 1998. I've been doing it for longer because obviously this means I'm old. We work with about 500 plus municipalities around the U.S. doing this stuff in addition to our corporate clients. Offices in Connecticut and Nevada, as well as we have clients in 37, 38 states and 8 countries. So you'll say spend a lot of time on their own. Next slide then. So yeah, I mean, it was mentioned. I mean, your guys are in pretty good shape. Your liabilities. This is the interim year. As you know, we do a full valuation every other year, and then we do an interim year or a roll forward year. So your liabilities went from $63 million and change, almost $64 million to $68 million and change. Part of that is about $2 million that have to do to a decrease in the discount rate or the interest rate used to value liabilities. I mentioned your assets had a very good year, up about 27% and change for the year, in addition to your contributions. You had good earnings for the year. It means your unfunded liability remains at $51 million, despite the fact the liabilities actually went up. By the way, anybody can chime in anytime with questions. Don't feel like you have to wait.
What drove it going up?
What's that?
What drove it going up?
Well, again, it went up for 2 reasons. One is it goes up for the simple passage of time as people get closer to retirement. But the other reason, as I mentioned, was your interest rate went down. So while it was mentioned, some would argue, I guess, that they think a 7.3% interest rate on the pension side is reasonable. I think most people would tell you that's still too high. That's why they're coming down. So at least in that world, we don't have anybody above 6.75. That's the maximum rate we'll use. High reasonable rate we can argue to use based on also it's the long-term nature of the markets. So with that said, so service cost. This slide is really, in the municipal context, isn't terribly meaningful, but just give you a couple quick. Service cost of the value of benefits being earned during the year by your active employees, about $1.5 million, 1.4 and change, is, think of it as deferred compensation. It's very similar to the normal cost you see on your pension system. It's the same thing. The value of benefits being earned during the year. Employer share of costs, that's for the retiree medical only, so not talking about the actives that you guys pay. But about $3.3 million change that you guys pay for your retirees during fiscal 21. Now that includes something called implicit cost. Not going to get into a long thing about it. I mean, I will if you want, but it has to do with the fact that the premiums for your active plans that retirees are on are generated by a blend of active employees and retirees. For GASB and OPEB purposes, we have to strip the actives to create what would be a true retiree-only premium, which is usually about 2.5 times what you would pay for the current blended premium that you have. So that's why you end up with this implicit cost situation. And you'll see the discount rate from 7 down to 6 3/4. Next slide. Again, this was an interim year, so there's no real things to drive experience. Again, the only things are really the assumption change, as I mentioned. The discount rate from 7 down to 6 3/4. This is disclosed liabilities by about $2 million. The key thing is, I say this over and over again to clients, assumption changes don't change costs. And what I mean by that is everyone's still going to live as long as they're going to live. We didn't change medical costs by a dime. People are going to retire when they retire. No assumptions change any of those things. They change when we reflect things in the financial statement, but the true costs are the true costs. So don't get hung up on the I guess the next page should be the actuarial assumptions. I think Might be a couple slides.
I was on the actuarial assumptions.
Yep. So again, the discount rate goes from 6.75, previously 7. These are all the things, again, the actuarial assumptions are what drive all these costs. Because I'm projecting you hire somebody 21 years old today. What's the probability they make it to retirement? What's the probability they elect to retire? What's the probability they elect coverage? How much are healthcare costs going to be? So we're projecting out for 100 years to figure out what the costs are going to be each year and then bring those back to today. So that's really all these assumptions to go into it. And the one thing I can assure you is that we are wrong. And I know that sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I don't know when everyone's going to live and everyone's going to die. I don't know when Jimmy's going to decide to retire or when Mary's going to decide to quit. So we make our best estimates based on the information we have, but assuredly we do not have a crystal ball that we know exactly what's going to happen. Next slide, please. So again, in terms of your guys' medical offerings, your plans on average about $778 for the plan and about $283 for your Medicare supplement plan. Your plans honestly are a little bit cheaper than the statewide average of what we see. So definitely do a good job of managing your costs. You're definitely a little bit, get a little bit less expensive than we see. I was at a meeting this morning in your general area, and they were at about $900 for an active single plan and about $400 for a Medicare supplement plan. So compared to your peers, your costs are next slide, please. So to the question that came up before, how are you doing? This is one that everyone wants to know. Well, 89% of the clients we see, and we work again, 150 municipal entities across towns to schools and housing authorities and utility districts and so on, 89% of them are less than 20% funded. You guys are at 25%, so you're comfortably in the top 10%. So, compared to your peers, you guys are doing a very nice job, and obviously, I'm sure the rating agencies definitely appreciate that as well as your taxpayers. The obvious question everybody says, okay, well, how do I compare against my peers? That's what everybody wants to know. And so we select some people that are, geographically close by. And again, if you look at things, you'll see your funded percentage in the middle of the screen. You're at 25 compared to your towns. Westford's at 7, Kingsborough's at 0.9, Ayer's at 22. The statewide average is about 13. So again, you're doing far better than your peers in general. And then if you're on the far right-hand side, you'll see the per retiree cost. So what's it cost you per year? About $3,500. Our statewide average is about $6,000 and change. And even among your peers, you're definitely lower. So again, you're doing a very good job there. And some slides, we just got rid of these this morning, but in your guys' case, we kept them as kind of showing, the unfunded liability as a percentage of either the final EQB or the levy limit. And again, both of those, you guys are much better than your statewide averages. Compared to your peers, you're doing better in general, and compared to statewide average, you're doing much better. So again, you guys have done a really nice job of managing. Next slide. So the service cost I mentioned is, the liabilities as a percentage, not the liabilities, the liabilities earned each year by an active employee. And so again, it's about $1,800 per employee. So think about it as John Smith or Mary Jones works for you. They're earning $50,000 a year. They're earning about $1,800 a year in medical benefits to be paid in retirement. So think of it as deferred. And you will notice is public safety generally is almost always a higher number. The reason of they have generally a shorter working career early. So because of that, they get a higher overall benefit because they retire earlier. You have to amortize those costs over a shorter period of time. That's why you'll see public safety always has the highest service cost. The other groups, a lot of them have small numbers of people, so they can be very demographically sensitive. Either they might have younger employees will have higher costs. So, cable access, I'm guessing, have younger people working there. Whereas, compared to say, I don't know, maybe the school system might have slightly older people or stormwater. Next slide, please. So this is really, what's going to happen over time. So you guys right now are projected to be fully funded on the OPEB system in the early 2040s, which is column, number 3, your net OPEB liability. But one of the things I like to show on the far right-hand side is present value. In other words, what are liabilities as a percentage of in today's dollars? I think it becomes terrifying to people to see $69 million liability going to $250 million liability and go, why even try? We really try and put it in today's dollars. And you can see it's going to go from Second from the right, you'll see $68 million goes to $79 million over 40 years. So you're talking about going up by about 12 or 13% over a 40-year period. It means basically is that your liabilities as a percentage of your budget are not going to change materially over the next 40 years. And the cash cost, the pay-as-you-go cost, you go from 3.3 million, go up to about $4 million in today's dollars, then come back down to about 3.7 million over the 40-year period. So again, you're going up by about 10% over the next 40 years. It's a very reasonable, manageable cost, let's put it that way. So again, from a standpoint of, can you manage these costs? Absolutely. Now, part of that's because you guys are putting in a fair chunk of money every year. You're putting in $1 million every year. Because you put in that $1 million and change every year, that's what enables us to use that 6.75% interest rate. If you were not setting aside money, we'd be using a number closer to 3.5%, which would mean instead of a $68 million liability, we'd show a liability of about $110 million. So your choice to fund actually means you have less that you need to fund. Certain circular logic GASB has, which I may not be a fan of, but those are the rules. And so choices to fund actually help your financial statement look a lot better. I mean, we are note 12 on the financial statement. We are, as was mentioned earlier, we are one of the top balance sheet items out there. But again, you guys are taking active steps to reduce this, and I think you're in very good shape overall. Next slide, which is basically questions. Questions, comments, concerns, anything we can do?
So just a quick question to summarize. Because the amount of money we're putting in, that decides the discount rate?
Yes, if you come from the corporate world, that sounds idiotic. However, in the municipal world, as GASB is a somewhat political organization, that is the way in which as I tell clients all the time, your discount rate is determined really by 5 factors, which is year.
Could you start that statement again? You cut out, Parker. The 5 factors?
Yeah, so you have 5 factors really that drive the discount rate, which are how much assets do you currently have in your fund? What are your benefit payments every year? What are the municipal bond rate? How much money are you basically committed to funding each year? And then how are you investing the money? So as an example, if you guys have your trust right now, you put it all in treasuries, your discount rate would drop less. So you guys get credit for the fact that you guys are invested fairly aggressively. If so, your choice of how you decide to fund those, invest those funds factors in, as well as how much money you decide to set aside each year. So that's why it always says, well, what can my discount rate be? I have to say, well, how much do you invest money, how much do you set aside? Those have a lot to do with it. I agree with that. I think the corporate way makes a lot more sense. But these are the rules we have.
Is there a different, are they equally weighted, the 5 items you listed, or is one heavily weighted more than the other?
The weighting depends on each individual factor. So if you told me, hey, we have no assets currently, and we're going to put in $1 a year, the fact that you're invested in penny stocks is not going to help. But if you tell me that we have, let's just say you had $100 million in your trust and you're invested in treasuries, you would still be underfunded because I'd show about a 3% discount rate. So different levers have more impact depending on where you stand in different places. So if you told me your benefit payments were $12 million a year, that would cause your discount rate to drop because you'd eat up the trust a lot quicker. So based on how much money you're setting aside, about $1 million and change, with your current payments of about $3 million and change, and your current balance of about $17 million, that fund isn't seen to be depleted, so therefore we get to use the long-term rate based on how you're investing your money. So again, they all interact, and the weighting of them varies based on, again, it's not a simple, hey, this is the most important factor. The factor for you, your most important factor right now is how you choose to invest the money. For somebody else, it's a matter of how much money they're setting aside or what the current level of the fund is. So it just depends on, different things have different weighting depending on.
But how we invest it is in our favor because the balance is so high.
Where you sit, yes.
Because we have so much money, we can be more aggressive, which is catching us up quicker.
By virtue of, that's why, to the earlier comment, my flaw with the GASB methodology is is that what GASB math would have you do, and I'm not recommending this to be clear, is you would get the highest discount rate by basically taking the entire money and putting it in the most speculative stock class you can find. It's no sense from a logical standpoint, but that is what would get you the.
Parker, you cut out after from a logical standpoint.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you follow the GASB method, what it would have you do is take your portfolio and invest it all as aggressively as humanly possible. So put it all in, say, emerging market debt, Bitcoin, pick whatever thing you think is a ridiculously aggressive
Or just ridiculous.
liability. To be clear, not recommending any of that. If you were looking to game the system under the way GASB math works, that is what the ultimate outcome would be if you followed it to its logical conclusion.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Um,
Pat has a question?
Well, I don't know if it's for Parker or for Darlene or Paul. In the executive summary, it says the town currently has 8 retirees or covered spouses who are over the age of 65 and enrolled in an active medical plan rather than Medicare. I thought we had a rule that they had to go to Medicare once they reach 65.
But
Generally, that is people, as a general rule, those are people who never paid into Medicare and are not eligible for Medicare. So it's not a matter that they're not saying, hey, listen, I decided I like your plan better. It's a matter of going, they can't be on Medicare because they never paid in. So these are generally people who were hired before 1986, usually in the school system.
Okay. And we do have that, we do have 8 like that. Okay, thanks.
So who decides, and maybe another question for John and Darlene, who decides how the money gets invested, how aggressive?
Oh, John can explain that one. It's not us downstairs, reading the markets.
Good evening. John Souza, Town Treasurer, Finance Director. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Town Manager Cohen. The town made a decision a number of years ago at town meeting, and it was brought before town meeting, all our OPEB assets are managed by a special agency of the Commonwealth of Mass called the PRIM Board. It's Pension Reserves Investment Management Board. And they do a great job. They invest the state retiree pension fund, and they also invest the state OPEB fund. And a few years ago, they opened it up to, when a law change in the law allowed municipalities they would create a sub-account within the Pension Reserves and Management Trust for each town and account for it. So they have a really good track record. If you go to, on the internet, www.mapension.com, you can read more about it. But generally, the thought, what PRIM is working towards is their assumed rate of return in most cases is going to be they're trying to earn at least about 7 to 7.5% of a return a year for the pension and OPEB funds. Last year was an exceptional or a blowout year because of the strong recovery once COVID sort of waned a bit and the markets came roaring back. And that's when Parker mentioned, there were some stories in the media this year that, for fiscal year 21, the PRIM board and the staff earned about just under 30%. And so that's when Parker mentioned it was about 27%, and that's net of fees. So we really benefited from that in fiscal year 21. Now that, I just want to, for people that may be watching, do I think that we'll earn 27% for fiscal year 22? Absolutely not, unless they have to be exceptional situations. But they've done really well, and they have a good track record.
So do they invest it all as one huge pile or one sub-account the same way, or do they give you like a sleeve of options?
It's all invested. They make the decisions, but it's invested. I could get you the board some more information on it, but they're in various sectors, everything from domestic equities, global equities.
But you're the same as every other town.
Every other,
Yeah,
yes.
we're not providing the input of how
No,
they
we,
invest.
as
No, I
treasurer,
just wanted kind of like a retirement plan. You can say, I want the growth, I
No.
want the growth with
No.
aggressive, I want the growth, but you're in with.
no, as treasurer, I don't have that
Right.
authority, but I will say that they're very, it's invested, one of their mandates is to try to do it responsibly, but also achieve the highest return they can for both the Commonwealth and the town, so.
Great mandate.
It avoids the politics, too, as well.
Highest gain.
Don't want us.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Parker, and thank you, Paul and John and Darlene and your teams. Well done.
Great job.
Okay, so that brings us to the tax classification hearing.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, we have Frank Green, our Chief Assessor, who's here to present the tax classification report, along with the Chair of the Board of Assessors, Sam Chase. It's
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Sam Chase, representing the Board of Assessors at this hearing. Assessors are appointed by the town manager for a 3-year term. Current board members are Sam Chase, Jack Duffett, and Kevin Sullivan. Although board members must qualify as assessors by meeting state certification requirements, we do not manage or engage in day-to-day assessing operations. That work is done by our chief assessor, Frank Green, and his staff. Let's talk just a little bit about the property valuation process. It's based on universally accepted standards established by the American Appraisal Institute and governed by Massachusetts law. Residential properties are valued using the construction cost and sales review methods together. Commercial properties are valued using cost, sales, and income capitalization methods together, all 3 methods used for commercial and industrial. The results are then checked using standardized statistical testing methods to arrive at a market value for a specific property type. The Department of Revenue then reviews the assessor's work and must certify that all real estate values meet the legal standard of being at full and fair cash value before a uniform tax rate can be finalized. Assessors start the annual process by submitting required data to the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, but we do not set the property tax rate. Under Massachusetts law, that is your job, and you do that only after conducting an advertised public hearing on the potential effects of split rates and exemptions, which you are now doing. The chief assessor will walk you through a presentation that is designed to make it easy for you to see how various rate and exemption options can impact property taxpayers. You can also see how Chelmsford's property tax burden compares with other towns in our area. Hopefully, this package of information will help you with your decision-making process. Now, I'd just like to say that on behalf of our board, I want to express our gratitude to Frank and his capable staff for the outstanding work they do to ensure that residents are treated fairly and courteously. Residents who have questions concerning property valuations should feel comfortable in contacting the assessor's office at 978-250-5220. Frank and his staff are always available to assist you. And I will now turn the balance of the presentation over to our Chief Assessor, Frank Green, and please feel free to ask questions during the presentation and then after the presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Madam Chair, Select Board, Town Manager Paul Cohen. Here we are again. Public hearing held each year by law. The purpose is to provide an open forum for the public discussion of tax policy. After the discussion, the review, the Select Board can decide what tax rates to classify the property at the same or at different rates. The areas we'll be reviewing this evening will be some of the requirements for the evaluation, abatements and compliance in terms of the income and expense reports, minimum residential factor, the historical review of the tax rates, and the effect of the various rates and shifts on the tax rate for each property class. The exemptions and the abatements and the compliance. First of all, the first thing to review is the small commercial exemption, which all the exemptions are, there are 3 major exemptions, 4 really, all of which really act in the same way
in the sense that they, a shift of the valuation from either within the class, from one part to another part, or from one class to another class. The small exemption is an exemption that applies to those parcels that are valued at less than $1 million with a business that has no more than 10 full-time employees. In that case, depending on the amount adopted, it shifts the value to those parcels that don't qualify in the rest of the commercial properties that don't qualify in all industrial properties. The residential exemption acts in a very similar manner. It's granted to the principal residents of the properties, that is to say, people who live in the property and use that property as their billing address in terms of income, in terms of the Internal Revenue Service. The shift goes to apartments as well as seasonal and higher valued homes. Once again, this exemption shifted away from parcels that qualify into parcels that are either seasonal or non-owner occupied or greater than the average value for the residential. Open space discount, which currently right now, no communities within the Commonwealth have the open space discount. Bedford had it for a number of years, but at some point within the last couple of years abandoned it. The open space discount basically adopts an exemption up to 25% of the value for vacant land is established by the Board of Assessors and shifts it to those parcels that, the other residential parcels. This does not impact commercial or industrial or personal property.
And Frank?
Yep.
And Chelmsford currently has the small commercial and not
That's
the
correct.
residential.
That's correct. It has the small commercial since fiscal 19. We adopted, I think, 10%. It's been consistent since then. Right now, we have each and every year, it's of the 600 parcels or so, I think 244 qualify for that exemption. And once again, that exemption works in the sense that those get 10% of the value exempted, which shifts it to the balance of the commercial properties and all industrial properties. Abatements, this is kind of a 3-year summary of the abatements. As you can see, fiscal 19 was 54 that filed on the residential, 28 acted upon favorably. In fiscal 20, it was 51. And then most recently, fiscal 21, is 30 residential filed, 28 filed for commercial industrial. In terms of the income and expense, we had a compliance rate for fiscal 22 of 49%, which is still above the state average. The minimum residential factor is actually established by the Department of Revenue. It's a way of reviewing whether, if we're going to split the tax rate, what would be the maximum amount we could split it. In Chelmsford case, as in most communities, but certainly not all, 50% is probably the most. There's some can go to higher ones if they've been splitting the rate for quite a few years. The historical review, slide 6. This is a 10, 11, 12-year look back, which I think I've had here for a number of years. It shows the residential rates, the total levies, and off to the right, third column from the right, it shows the high to low as reported by the GOR, where Chelmsford ranks, and all communities rank. Chelmsford, as you can see, most recently is 72. That is to say there were 71 communities ahead of us in terms of having a higher average residential tax amount. Again, that year was $7,400. You can see as you look to the bottom, the bolded line, fiscal 22, projected holding everything constant, that the average single-family value would be $496,500, up from $470,000. The average tax bill up to $7,830, and that's an increase in terms of dollars of about $419, or 5.6%. The next slide is a slide that really is just another graphic way of showing the tax rates since 2016. And I think what it kind of tells us is that, and you can kind of see in the middle there, the fiscal 19, when we adopted it, that it was at $16.30 roughly, and that it's been steady or at least coming down. It just shows the trend of the tax rates kind of being stable with also a relatively stable budget. Same thing here on the slide 8. It's the commercial industrial. It's the same thing as the previous slide, only related to the commercial industrial. Once again, in fiscal 19, you can see it increased into $2.22. It's still relatively stable. The tax rates are trending down a little bit, which shows, and this is relative to assessed values. This was a slide that was incorporated into the presentation a number of years ago. It selected a handful of communities, a dozen communities or so, and just took it since 2019, what their increases were, what the split rates were if they had them across the top row there. And you can see that it averages them out down at the bottom. So it goes from 2009 through 2021. And Chelmsford, for example, has roughly 3.25% increase over that time frame. That sort of places it in the middle of the communities that have been selected, which are, for the most part, abutting communities. This is a more ambitious slide that shows something similar. It took Chelmsford and the abutting communities, Billerica, Lowell, Tewksbury, and took that very similar data along with the valuations associated with them, their ranking on the far right, the average tax bill, average single-family value, that sort of thing. And also then took a look at, in concentric circles around that community, abutting to abutting Bedford, Acton, Littleton, and then communities that abut that, Burlington, Methuen, Lawrence. Next slide is a graph that shows going basically from a flat rate of 1 and all the way to 150, which would be the max that Chelmsford could adopt. You can see if we had a single tax rate projected for fiscal '22, it would be $16.49. And right around the middle of the chart shows the 122, which is all things being equal, if that's what we adopt again, or the select board should adopt, the tax rate would be almost unchanged from last year, as well as the commercial, at $15.77 and $20.12 respectively. And then it moves up through the 130, 140, 150, and the graph, of course, shows as these bars begins to diverge from one another, residential to commercial. This is a busy chart, and it's the one you'll refer to when ultimately you take the vote, and it shows the range of 1 to 150. Highlighted in the middle is once again 122. This is projected for 22. The valuations haven't already been certified for 22. And the residential factor on the far right is what you reference when taking the vote. Across the top row, I've given an assortment of 4 residential values, 300, 400,000, 496.5, and also the average commercial industrial property. And kind of given a sense here of where the values are. What the changes are is you move through 100 or a flat rate through 150. And of course, the residential begins to kind of drop both by percentage and by actual tax dollars. Conversely, of course, the commercial industrial begins to increase. On the commercial industrial, you can see that if you're looking again at 122, the bill would be, or the tax amount would be $27,841. And that, when you look to the right of that, just over $5,000, that's how much, that's basically a 22% increase at that particular adoption of 122. Conversely, when you look at the residential, when considering the 496.5, there's a savings of about $358, or 4.4% almost. Another one of the exemptions here, the residential exemption is it's a shift that shifts the tax burden within the residential class from lower valued properties to higher valued ones, and to those owned by non-residents. Examples of communities that have adopted this would be Tisbury, Barnstable, Truro, Wellfleet. This is also geared for communities that have quite a bit of rental inventory, and that would include Cambridge, Malden, Watertown, and Somerville. There are, I think, 14 or 15 altogether. The adopting the residential exemption increases the residential rate, and it shifts within the residential class and reduces the taxes paid by homeowners with moderately valued properties. The CIP is unaffected by this particular exemption. By statute, the exemption can be no more than 35% of the average assessed value. Be applied to residential parcel that is the owner's principal place of address as of January 1st, as recognized by the state income tax returns. This is in addition to any other exemptions. They're referring to statutory exemptions that are offered to our citizens. The average residential value is $445,900. When calculating the average, it doesn't take the average single family, but all residential properties, vacant land, large apartment buildings, the whole thing. This here is the next slide, slide 15, is kind of an illustration of the impact of adopting these. If you look at, say, $300,000, with a split rate, it would be roughly $4,433. The difference being $299 from a single tax rate. For non-owner occupied, would be $5,200, and an increase for those folks that didn't qualify, given that same valuation of $475. So the savings might be $300 on one side, and an increase of $475 for those that don't qualify. Small commercial exemption works in a similar way. There are 14 communities that have this. Communities that would include Seekonk, Swampscott, Braintree, and North Attleboro. Most of them have adopted 10% similar to Chelmsford. The commercial value can be no more than $1 million and have 10 or fewer full-time employees at all locations. Any savings that's realized by a property owner that qualifies for this, it goes to the property owner. It is not necessarily passed on to the business that actually helped them qualify. Once again, the exemption, the amount saved by the property owner, that's passed on to those that don't qualify in all remaining industrial properties as well. This is an example of, once again, similar to the other illustration. It shows that, say, for $400,000 property, would be roughly an $8,000 bill with the split rate in the small commercial for non-eligible. For those that are eligible, it would be $7,313 or an $813 savings for a qualifying parcel. And you can see anything greater than $1 million doesn't qualify regardless of the number of full-time employees they have. Any questions?
Questions? If the board has no questions, I'll invite public comment.
Good evening, everyone. Tom Boucher, 14 Galloway Road. I am here tonight as a resident to discuss our split tax rate and also as president for the Chelmsford Business Association. I do need to make it clear that I do not own commercial property in town, and I think we should be looking more towards a fairer way of taxation for both residents and businesses. Based on what I've seen with the levy increase, our taxes are going up. There are going to be residents that can afford whatever the marginal increase is, and there are going to be residents that probably are going to be they're going to see hardship from that marginal increase. And the same goes true with businesses. There's going to be businesses that can handle an increase in taxes, and there are going to be businesses that are going to struggle with an increase in tax. And what happened in 2019 with the split rate, soon afterwards was the institution of the stormwater runoff fees, which I don't know how many of you have talked to some of the business owners, but these fees are significant on top of the split rate. Chelmsford is unique in the sense that our tax base is 80-20 split. It's mostly residential. We're somewhat of a bedroom community. But yet, back in 2019, we put the burden of taxation on the minority taxpayer, being the business. And I know we've worked at trying to bring that down. You were kind to reduce the rate by 5% 2 years ago. I ask that you give some consideration in doing something similar this time around. It really is the right thing to do. The math is flawed with the way it's set up with our 80-20 split. And it would just, I think it would go a long way to the businesses that are being burdened not only by the increased taxation from the split, but also from the stormwater drains. And your consideration is appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak? Not seeing anyone. Anyone else in this room? I know it's typically our practice to hold this hearing open for another meeting. Is that what the board would like to do? Okay. So Frank and Sam, I think at our next meeting, we'll need I know there's some legal language that
That's right.
needs to be around the motion for you for the state, so we'll need that.
I'll have that prepared for you.
What's the date of our next meeting?
29th.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we continue this public hearing to our next meeting, November 29th. 2021.
I second the motion.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
We have people waiting in the meeting for Agenda Item 11, the Fire Station Committee, and Agenda Item 12, Trammell Crow Residential. So if the board doesn't object, I'd like to take those out of order before we do town manager reports. Okay.
We're going to 11 first?
Yeah, so I'm going to start, we'll go to agenda item number 11, which is we have to make 2 appointments this evening. The first is for the Fire Station Committee, Select Board resident appointment, and then the Select Board has to appoint a Select Board member. So let's start with the resident. We do have, I see 2 applicants in the Zoom room and 1 in this room. Do you want to take comment from applicants, or they're here to answer questions if you have any questions?
We didn't ask them to come like we
No.
did for the other.
Well, Christina sent them
Oh,
a
she
note
did.
and said, we're doing this tonight, so you can come in case the
Okay.
board has
I
questions.
just wanted to make sure that they knew we were
Yeah.
discussing it.
Okay. Is there an objection to asking if the people who are here would like to say anything?
I'm fine
You
with
okay
it.
with that? So would any of the applicants who are present like to say anything? Let me start in the room.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Manager. My name is Patrick Maloney. I live at 51 Kensington Drive. I applied for this committee because it seems like it's kind of right up my alley based on a lot of the experiences that I've had working for the town of Chelmsford in the past. I played an instrumental role in developing planning and securing funding for the current fire headquarters. I'm currently project manager for the town on North Fire Station, and pretty much been involved in this these studies for the last 20 years. So there's no real ramp-up time for me when it comes to understanding how the fire department works and the municipalities work. And I think that's a benefit as well for the town. And the other item I wanted to mention was that with my construction experience and knowledge of costs and things like that for town projects as well as other things, I feel that'd be a real benefit to that committee to explore all the options appropriately. And that's it, unless there's any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think I see 4 applicants in the Zoom room, so I'll just call out your names. If you'd like to say something, you're welcome to do that. Cheryl O'Donnell.
Hi, good evening. My name is Cheryl O'Donnell. I'm a resident at 2 Bridge Street in Chelmsford. I've lived at 2 different locations in Chelmsford during my residency. I'm a member of the Massachusetts State Police. I'm assigned to the State Fire Marshal's Office. I'm a certified fire and explosion investigator with the state, which has allowed me to work personally with fire departments from 3 different counties, Middlesex, Suffolk, and Essex counties. I've personally worked with Chelmsford Fire on multiple investigations, fatal fires, accidentals. I've seen their response, suppression efforts. I'm familiar with what it takes to put a fire out safely and effectively. I would be honored to take part in this assignment. I have flexibility in my time and would definitely feel that I could bring a lot to the table as far as my connections with other municipalities and how they run their fire departments. And maybe we could integrate and use some of that information to help Chelmsford reach their goals here in town.
Thank you, Cheryl. The next one I see on the screen is Bob.
Yes, how you doing tonight?
Good.
Name is Bob Destrimp. I work at, I live at 20 Singlefoot Road. I've been a resident of Chelmsford since 1993. I put in for this committee because of my background. I'm currently a firefighter in the city of Lowell. I'm on my 28th year. I've worked up to the rank of deputy chief. I'm a shift commander. And I guess the reason I'm putting in for it, because if the chair has any specific questions about fire safety, fire manpower, response times, I could be a real asset to the committee in that aspect. I have a lot of knowledge of the fire service. I also work at the Massachusetts Fire Academy as a fire instructor for the recruit class. So firefighting's in my blood. I think I could really help out the committee if they have any specific questions about all sorts of fire. I mean, even as far as a lot of people don't even understand what each truck does. I can really give you any kind of information you need to know about how a fire service runs, what a fire truck does, what a ladder truck does, how we pump water, how much specific manpower we should have in a town of Chelmsford size. So that's why basically I put my name in for this committee, and I appreciate you people hearing from me.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Kristen?
Hello, everybody. Kristen Champagne, I live at Kennedy Drive. Based on the three people that just spoke, I think they are a much better choice. I thank you for reviewing and allowing me to come to this, but I think you guys are in much better hands with any one of those three people that just spoke.
Thank you, Kristen. I did see a SD on the screen. I assume that might have been Susan, the other person, Susan Duggan, but it disappeared. Paul, you have your hand raised in the Zoom function. Did you want to?
No.
No, okay. Okay, did I miss anybody? All right. Is there any discussion or thoughts from the board?
We make a recommendation, is that what you want us to do?
Well, I disagree with Kristen. I mean, I quite frankly, looking at what the composition of this committee is going to be, I mean, it looks like it will be pretty heavy on people that have firefighter backgrounds. And I'm glad that the union is using the same group of applicants to decide who will be their additional person to be on the committee. I think it would be important to have somebody that has more facilities background, in addition to all the people already on it, like I said, that have the firefighting background. So, I mean, the two that I had noted would be Kristen Champagne and Patrick Maloney. So I would...
Okay. Anybody else have any input?
I like the last gentleman that spoke from Lowell, deputy chief, as far as operations are concerned or what have you. And I think what we're going through, maybe where we're looking at maybe reducing the number of stations or what have you, I think it's very instrumental in having, very important to have somebody that understands firefighting and what's available in certain areas, what type of apparatus is available, how many men should be on a unit in a particular area or what have you, and somebody just understands the whole concept. So he would be my recommendation.
Okay.
We're choosing just one, right?
We're choosing one.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have any thoughts, Ken?
I mean, I was on the fence with three, but after I heard Charles speak, I thought the point she made where she's worked with a lot of other towns and reviewed what they're doing in other towns, and I think we're sort of an oddity with 5 stations. I'm only aware of one other town with 5 stations. It'd be interesting to get that sort of input from someone that can look at other towns, compare stations per town and response times and bring that to the table. So that was my choice.
I think it's a good choice.
Yeah, I do too.
I liked the perspective also from the state the experience that Cheryl had from the state. I think all of the applicants would do a fine job, but we have to pick one, so.
So you want a motion? Or how do you want to do it?
Sure, I mean, it sounds like, are most people leaning towards Cheryl?
Cheryl O'Donnell?
Yes. Mark, you're
Yeah, I mean, she
scanning your
was one
screen.
of, actually, I had three as well. and
Yeah, I
Cheryl
had
was one
three
of them.
too.
And after hearing her, I do like her perspective, her ability to give us the perspective about other towns and so forth and at the state level, so, as you mentioned.
I don't think you could go wrong with any of them, but I think
No.
they're all very qualified.
You need an official vote?
We do, we need a
All right, so
vote.
I'll make a motion to approve Cheryl, appoint Cheryl O'Donnell to the fire, I'm looking for the right word for the committee, is the Fire Station Study Committee.
I'll second the motion.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll go along. I'll make it unanimous.
5-0. Welcome, Cheryl, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm honored. Thank you.
Okay, and now we need to appoint a select board member to this committee.
I'll recommend the chair, Virginia, if she'd like to.
Because you don't have enough to do.
I don't mind doing it. I'm happy to do it if that's what you guys want. Participated in the first discussion.
So did George make a motion? If he did, I'll second it.
Okay.
I recommend.
You're making a motion. All right, all those in favor? Aye, 5-0. Congratulations to me. Okay, Melissa, do you have, and Mark, do you have everyone you need here?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to take item 12 out of order. That's the development agreement regarding Trammell Crow, proposed redevelopment of 255 Princeton Street. For the record, Board Member LaFave is recusing himself, and we also have Town Council Paul Haverty here to participate in this discussion. Is there any introduction either of you would like to give, or?
Sure. Good evening, Madam Chair. For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Farrell and Robbins. Since the last meeting, we did make some changes to the development agreement, but they weren't significant. I think that Mr. Haverty had a chance to review it, and so did Mr. Cohen. There were some marginal comments. You can probably see them on your copy that you received in the packet. I think we've addressed those comments. I defer to Town Council on whether or not he's satisfied with our responses, but if the board had any questions regarding any of the insertions or any of the marginal comments, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm gonna get the right version here. In paragraph 2, traffic, paragraph G, 2G. I thank you for adding this. This was the paragraph about installation of traffic signage. The only question I had, and it's just more because I don't know the answer, is should there be any language in that paragraph associated with like the original genesis for this, which is to minimize cut-through traffic or and other safety issues, or is it okay as it is? Paul?
I think that it certainly helps to identify the purpose for why we're going to be including this and why we're going to be reviewing it as part of the permitting process. So I think language such as that would be helpful.
And what does Trammell Crow team think about that?
Sure, we'd be happy with an amendment. I mean, it could be as easy just as saying to address any concerns regarding surrounding streets and neighborhoods and cut-through traffic and any related traffic.
Okay.
And we can say included but not limited to. That way we don't limit any of the planning board's authority or the traffic consultant's authorities. I think we've been pretty consistent throughout this document to make sure we did that.
Okay. I have a couple more, but let me go to the other board members. Anybody else have a question?
The only comment I would make is on paragraph 7, $15,000 for the school impact seems kind of low. I mean, I guess I was expecting at least another 0 on it.
I had the same comment. My thought as a potential next step from here would be, it's hard to have these big group multi-board meetings, so we have time to ask, like, the school committee, the Conservation Commission, and the planning board to give comments maybe to Paul Haverty after their next meeting. And then I think we should be pretty close to buttoning it up. Does that make sense?
So, okay.
Because the only way I know how to reconcile whether 15,000 is a good number or not is to go back to the school committee.
Okay.
Right, so our choice is to either ask them to look at the changed paragraphs and come back to us, and I would suggest to Paul Haverty or someone on staff, so it's not to another board member, or to ask them to come back here to another meeting, which gets really difficult to get orchestrated.
Mhm.
I know it's a little bit more for you guys, but
No, it makes sense, though, and we still have time, because I
Right.
think this board meets on the 29th. We're going to have our public forum on the 30th. So if you send these comments out to the specific departments they address, like the school department or the Conservation Commission, and just ask for comments back by the 29th.
So the Conservation Commission will probably go into the first week of December, just because that's their meeting schedule.
Sure.
I think the school committee and planning board are both within the next 2 weeks, their next meetings.
So that works from a timeline
The end
perspective.
of the last week of November, right?
Yes.
So, does that make sense to
Yes.
folks?
It's a one-time fee, right? That's 15,000, or is it, that's not per student?
Well, the way it's written, yeah.
For
Okay.
student, I don't think they would go with for that.
No, well, that's why, well,
Yeah, no, I agree.
that's why I agree, but I didn't think it was to make a deal out of 15,000 as opposed to all the other money. That's what threw me off a little bit, that's all.
Okay.
Not knocking anybody or anything, it just,
Yeah, I'm not sure it should
Clarify.
just be earmarked either, just for buildings. I think it should be it could be transportation, could be anything.
I think when we first started talking about it,
Capacity
it was
studies.
about impact studies, but what I recall Dr. Lang said is they've pretty much done the impact studies that included this, so it would be money for other types of studies.
Let's just say yes, for school purposes, it doesn't. say
Right, for
specific.
school purposes. Deirdre Connolly, can you,
She just came in.
oh, yeah, but that's what was echoing.
Sorry.
Thank you. Are you on the Zoom?
Well, I was just to raise my hand.
That's okay, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't a Zoom bomber.
I put it out there
Okay.
so it wouldn't feedback. I just have something I want to say later when, I don't know if I'm able to.
From the planning board? From,
Something that I'd like to have the planning board further discuss a bit.
okay, I don't know if you heard what I just said. Okay, what I had recommended is that the select board ask their comments, because the other boards aren't on the agenda tonight, and because it's too hard to get everybody together, that we ask the planning board, the school committee, and the Conservation Commission to put this on their next published agendas, which for the planning board, I think would be the end of the month at this point.
I think it's December 8th.
For you, okay, for you to review and comment and provide comments back through town council.
Perfect.
And then we'll look at it and try to wrap it up.
Perfect.
Okay. Do the select board members have any other comments? Questions? I just had one, on paragraph 8, the conservation restriction. I was just reading the comments in the margin, and in response to Attorney Haverty's question, it said per Evan's request. Is there some clarification around that, or have you guys already talked?
I have not had a conversation with Evan yet about this, but I will. So the statute, Chapter 184, Sections 31 and 32, is intended as an exception to the general standard, that is, that restrictions on land are only good for 30 years. But by doing something that's consistent with the statute, you get to have a permanent restriction that can only be removed if you go through the state legislature to actually have that restriction removed. There is some case law that suggests that a restriction, even though it's not pursuant to the statute, that is held by a municipality, would still also be enforceable in perpetuity. But I wanted to get some clarification from Evan on that as to why he didn't want to do this as a conservation restriction pursuant to the statute, because that has more certainty in terms of the long-term enforceability.
Doesn't it also take quite a bit more?
It's more involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly simpler to do it as, a non-state conservation restriction. There's less oversight, there are less hurdles you have to jump through. But the benefit to it is that you have a certainty that it's enforceable in perpetuity.
Okay. Anything else? So Melissa, you're good with, you and Mark are good with early December? Is what it's what it's going to amount to, just because of the other committee meeting cycles, but I think it's going to be at least that if we try to get everybody in one room again.
Right, and I think our public hearing for the planning board actually opens on December 8th, so that will be their first meeting to talk about the actual overlay
The
itself.
zoning article?
Yes.
Okay.
So the planning board obviously will be discussing it that night as well.
Okay.
And then I forget, the continuance date is the week after that for the planning board, so there's certainly more time to discuss it if they had any questions or concerns for this board. And I will just address the question quickly on the conservation restriction. It was purely procedural. Just as Attorney Haverty said, in order to go through the Chapter 184 process, it says it's an application through the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. You have to have somebody hold the conservation restriction, and then you do an application through the state, and then it comes back multiple times. I think Evan's intention was that you get the same product, you get the same outcome in perpetuity. I understand council's concern about not going through the 184 process, so we can talk about it offline and just make sure that the town's fully protected there from a conservation standpoint.
Okay, and just for the record, Mason Brunick from the Trammell Crow team just joined the meeting also in the Zoom room. Okay, so procedurally, who should send a note to the other committees or staff that support them to put this on their agenda and provide comments? Paul, do you agree with Paul Cohen?
No.
Is it okay to provide comments to Paul Haverty, or
Yeah, sure.
would you be rather work it another way?
Would you-
Paul's the one that's been working this, so.
So do you,
Do
Paul's
you
gonna do the- yeah.
do you guys want me to send them to Paul or Paul Haverty? Do you want to initiate the?
Either one is fine with me.
Okay, I just don't want to be in the loop when they reply, so.
Right, so maybe I should do it then.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And so they'll need to know soon.
So I'm sending it to
So I would,
Conservation
I would,
Commission,
I would send
School
it,
Committee.
yeah, I would send it to
Planning board.
Chris as the chair and our conservation agent who helps develop the agenda as a CC. I would send it to Tim Shanahan as the chair of the planning board and CC Evan.
Yep.
And then I would send it to Dennis King, he's the chair of the school committee. Maybe CC Dr. Lang, I'm not sure who,
Yeah.
I think that's the main staff member that supports the agenda development.
And are there any other boards that we should be notifying?
Those have been the three that have been involved in this, right?
Okay.
I mean, you might want to run it by the housing authority just to be sure all the choice stuff is right.
Yeah.
But
Should we, David Hedison, give him one more chop at it? Sure. And then just give him a deadline?
And just so this board's aware as well, we are meeting with the Housing Advisory Board tomorrow, so somebody from the Housing Authority will be
okay.
there as well, so we can make them aware of the fact. And Choice and SCG also will have a separate development agreement with the town, but theirs is much simpler. It basically says what they're going to build for affordable housing, but
Yeah.
certainly it can go back out to affordable housing.
Okay.
Just for scheduling thing, so is the expectation, just in terms of scheduling expectation, that given the dates in December and so forth, that in looking at the select board's schedule in December, that would it be realistic to assume that it would come back to the select board for final action on December 20th, Monday, December 20th?
That's when it would have to be executed, because it would have to be prior to town meeting.
So well, we haven't scheduled the town meeting yet either.
I know,
But that's why I'm raising.
well, we're also waiting on the planning board telling
Right.
us they're going to be ready for town meeting, so.
I should have said, assuming that we keep the January timeline, it would have to come back to the December 20th meeting. So if we aim for that, if we have to aim further, obviously it just pushes the timeline for town meeting a little later.
So Attorney Haverty, you can give them the date by which you need input.
Yep.
To support the select board on the 20th.
Okay, all right.
Okay, great. Does anybody have anything else on this topic?
Just one other thing.
Yeah.
We will have a townwide session on November 30th. We had asked the planning board at the last meeting if they would notice their session in case they had enough people from their board show up to the session. So I would ask the selectmen if they would do the same thing, if
put
they
an
want to do the
agenda
same
out, you
thing.
mean?
Yes, if you want to notice a meeting on the 30th in case you get a majority of your board there, if anybody wants to speak for the selectmen, just to be safe. The planning board's going to notice their hearing, so perhaps the Board of Selectmen would want to notice a hearing just in case you get a majority there as well.
If a majority of the board attends a planning board meeting, as long as we're not deliberating, do we have to notice it?
Right, the only concern is if multiple members of the board were to get up and speak during the course of that hearing.
This actually isn't this isn't the planning board public hearing, this is the public session, the public
Their
forum.
input session.
But it would still be, well, first of all, particularly if the planning board's noticing it, it is a planning board hearing.
Yes, they're going to notice the planning board meeting, so I was suggesting perhaps the Board of Selectmen would want to do it as well, just to be covered.
But again, it's something that's happening in public. If there is a quorum of the board present and a quorum of the board speaking, you run into a potential open meeting law claim if you haven't noticed it as a public hearing.
So we could notice it as select board support to the planning board's public input session?
At our last meeting, when the whole school committee was here, they did not notice that as a school committee meeting, and they were all here. I mean, I kind of think it's unnecessary.
I defer to what
Yeah.
we should.
It's simply a matter of, if there's going to be a discussion involving a quorum of the board during the course of that presentation, then you're running into a potential open meeting law issue. If a majority is there and they don't speak and don't get into any of the back and forth, it's not a problem.
We haven't been formally asked by the planning board to be there, so I think that's what we're struggling with.
But it's not a planning board meeting, it's the developer was asked to provide information to the community.
Okay.
So that's what this is.
So that's why you're suggesting.
But the planning board is noticing a meeting again so that they have the ability to speak during that.
We could mirror that noticing.
Right.
That's fine.
That's what I figured, just rather safe than sorry. If there's a majority of the board there and someone chooses to speak on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I just didn't want there to be an open meeting law issue.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. You gonna take that one, Paul?
Yeah.
Colin?
And I don't believe that multiple members of the school committee spoke at your last hearing, so there's no open meeting law
No.
concern with that.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, we're gonna go back on our regular agenda. Are you all set, Melissa and
Yes.
Mark? Okay, you're welcome to stay for meeting minute approvals and town
No, thank
manager
you.
reports.
Thank you very much.
And for the record,
Thank you for your work.
yeah, thank you. For the record, Board Member LaFave is returning to the meeting. Okay, Paul, I'm going to go back to agenda item 9, which is town manager reports.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Just a couple items this evening. First one is update on Ledge Road and the other traffic concerns. Just wanted to formally let the board know and the community know that we are continuing to follow up on the matters that were raised at the traffic listening sessions and previous discussions. Most notably, today, the portable speed humps were installed on Ledge Road. And again, we'll monitor to see the impact of that. The police department is doing traffic counts, and I use the word counts because it's plural, on Ledge Road. The portable speed boards of the police department have been installed on Swain Road. Also, cameras are in the process of being installed as well. So we're basically trying to follow through with some of the action items that were raised at previous meetings. And I know we'll come back with a more detailed and formal report at a future meeting, perhaps as early as 2 weeks from now, if not certainly in December. So just to keep people up to date that we're nearing the end of the construction season and so forth, and the end of the operations that take place, but we're trying to get as much information, as much done as we can, in a timely manner as possible.
I did have a Ledge Road resident reach out to me within a couple hours of the speed bumps going down. First, they were very appreciative, but they said that they felt that already it was quieter, like they weren't getting the noise effect of the trucks going over the bumps that we were concerned about. But they said just by virtue of the fact that they're slowing down, the road just seemed a lot quieter in those last couple of hours.
Well, there's a lot in that update, so thank you.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do everything we can.
Didn't there used to be a camera up there somewhere?
Yeah, the difficulty is Wi-Fi connection, is getting the connection out there. There was a camera out by the sewer pump station, and so that's sort of some of the aspects that we're looking at. The other challenge is that if the quality of the cameras in terms of the ability to read clearly and so forth, those are items that we're working with our IT folks in to make sure that we put equipment that's going to be helpful.
How long can those speed bumps stay in place?
Well, realistically, they'll go away during the winter months because you're going to do snow plowing and removal. But
I thought
beyond
originally
that,
they actually,
No,
you
there's-
actually mentioned they could go away in November.
yeah, I mean, we're keeping an eye on the weather, keeping an eye on the situation. But those are, I mean, I use the word portable, but they're driven into the ground with spikes. I mean, so it's not something that somebody can just walk away with them overnight or quickly move. But again, they were installed in a day, and they can be removed in a day.
And if they do, the cameras will catch them.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't worried about that. I was just
Yeah.
wondering how much data
Right.
you thought you would be able to get, a couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, we just want to see some weeks in terms of all the effect of the noise, people going, as we heard earlier about the tailgates and the other things we want
And
to
how
hear
did
about.
they decide where to put them?
I think there's 3 that were placed out there, and that was, a discussion amongst DPW and police and so forth in terms of where to install them.
Okay.
Next item is, again, the board's aware, but I want to formally notify the community. This Wednesday in this room at 11 a.m., there'll be an announcement by the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development regarding a MassWorks grant for the water main on Groton Road. Several months ago now, the board requested that the town submit a grant application. Evan Blansky did a lot of work to get that in. It was quick turnaround, and we've been asked to reserve a parking spot for the Secretary of Housing and Community Development, Secretary Keneally, for Wednesday. So we're thinking it's very positive news that he's coming out here. And no, the governor's not coming, not to my knowledge, but the Secretary is coming. And the way they do this is they do regional announcements in certain parts of the state in given days. And again, they'll be in this room this Wednesday at 11 a.m. So again, public's invited to attend, but certainly we'll get the information out. And we're waiting the release of a press release, which hasn't happened either. So as soon as we'll get that out. The state legislative's COVID-19 recovery and fiscal 21 surplus funding bill. That's sort of active as we speak. What do I mean active? Right now, it's in conference committee. What has happened is there's a bill has passed in the House and in the Senate that are different in terms of how they would use a portion of the American Rescue Plan Act funds that are provided to the Commonwealth, as well as how the state is expending some of its surplus from the prior fiscal year. What's notable for Chelmsford is the House bill contained $200,000 for park improvements in Chelmsford. The Senate bill, and again, recognize George Dixon. He went and reached out to Senator Barrett on behalf of the town, contacted his office. We had an earmark in the Senate bill. It was $350,000 to the North Chelmsford Water District for PFAS remediation. What's going to happen is they're going to conference committee. It's unclear if it's going to get done by this Wednesday. They're scheduled to recess for the 7 weeks. It's the mid-year break, holiday break for the legislature, which basically means everything doesn't die as it will a year from now at the end of the session, but they'll go on a 7-week break and then pick things up in January. There's a conference committee was named today, 3 House members, 3 Senate members. It's unclear if that will get resolved for a vote by Wednesday, but if not, we anticipate it'll get acted upon in January. And then obviously after the legislature moves it to the governor's desk, the governor then has the ability to sign, veto, and parts and whatever. So bottom line is progress is being made on those 2 items. And it probably be realistically by January where we see a final determination on that. And then the other part to note is there is going to be a second bill, maybe as early as January, for infrastructure, that the legislature is going to move forward. And part of that was predicated on what just happened today, where the president signed a national infrastructure bill, and that's going to provide money to the Commonwealth. So now the legislature is expected to act upon that bill in terms of from the state aspect, not only in terms of the money they may receive from the federal government, but also how they would use some of their surplus and ARPA monies towards that, which is also what's held up some cities and towns in terms of how they would use their portion. So why I mention that is that there's more to come in terms of infrastructure, and also we should be thinking in mind what asks we may want to have for Chelmsford, for our reps and senators in terms of infrastructure in that bill that, again, could happen as early as January. Again, what you got to bear in mind is that there's a lot going on in terms of the ARPA and the infrastructure, and don't ever underestimate the fact of an election year coming up as well. And so you've got to bear that out in terms of why things are happening and unfolding in the months ahead, and put for that in perspective is the legislative session will end at the end of next July, because they will then go on recess for the election, primary election next September, and then general election next November. So there's a lot of the moving on in the months ahead. And also in terms of our ARPA money, I'm scheduled to bring before you a list of proposals at your first meeting in December on the 6th. So a lot of things happening there. Next item I had real quickly was on sewer flow. I provided you by email, and it's in the packet if people want to see, is we're now into our 5th month of the fiscal year, and we're still running as a state by Boston's measures 12 inches over our seasonal rainfall average for a given year. And so what we're seeing is that our sewer flow is also running higher. In fact, it's running actually higher thus far than we were in our peak year of 2019, where we had 2.47 million gallons per day. We're running now at 2.65 through the month of October. And again, we'll monitor this as it goes through. And we'll also see what's going on around other communities. And towards that end, I've got a meeting scheduled next week for two things. One is, remember when you signed and approved the consent agreement for the Southwell matter, Weston and Sampson did submit an infrastructure and inflow plan to the Commonwealth, as well as we have follow-up on the sewer capacity thing. So I'll be working on that with staff in the next couple of weeks, and probably come back to you perhaps as early as December with an update, and perhaps bring Weston and Sampson back probably remotely into the meeting to see what efforts. And again, that's going to also fall into the ARPA plan as well. So we wanted to let the board know that, things are, we got a lot of balls moving, as you know. And then finally, this one is sort of timely, and this is about the interest in additional all-alcohol beverage package store license. As the board knows, because of the census, the town of Chelmsford and other communities all across the Commonwealth were notified by the ABCC last month about the new license quotas for restaurants, on-premises as well as off-premises restaurants, package stores. And in our case, as a reminder to the board, as we discussed at the previous meeting, Chelmsford has been allocated an eighth or an additional package store alcohol license. In speaking to Christina Bruce, our support services coordinator this afternoon, we've already had 5 inquiries on that license. And the question that we have is, how do you want to handle those? Is it first come, first serve, or do you want to, first of all, you're not obligated to issue it at all. So I want to make that clear. You're not required to issue a license. As you know, you've not issued any beer and wine off-premise licenses. But we are getting inquiries, and I guess the question that we have is, do we want to set a date in which you'll consider all inquiries filed by a date, or do you just want to take them first come, first serve, or do you, or the other extreme, you could say, hey, you know what, we're not interested in entertaining any licenses at the time. I just raise this because we're getting inquiries, as I said, 5 already. And again, I'm sure we're not the only community. Word get out, and attorneys and landowners and
So you're
and
looking to have a
investors.
discussion on this tonight?
Yeah, I'm just looking for some direction. Doesn't have to be tonight, whether you want
We're
to.
getting inquiries, not applicants.
No, we're getting applicants who are seeking to submit applications. In fact, one has already been reviewed and said this isn't complete, because everybody wants to be first in to grab a license. We've seen this in the past about transfer of licenses, the interest. So I guess I just wanted to, one, inform you of the fact, and two is have you give some thought, whether it's now or at a future meeting, about how does the board want to handle because you're going to be doing renewal licenses later this month in terms of the existing licenses, which is an annual event. But as I said, in addition to that, we've had 5 inquiries, looking to obtain information and applications for an all alcohol off premises, i.e. package store license.
I mean, I think I would rather have a drop dead date for all applicants, because I don't know if I would want to get someone in and decide, because my fear is if you put 2 liquor stores next to each other, the one that doesn't do well is going to start selling to whoever walks in the door just so they can make their rents and everything else, and you run into problems with, you get the guy with the neon lights and everything else going on versus, so I'd rather have it geographically located throughout the town as opposed to 3 on the same street, with the hopes that they'd all, sort of survive. But that's just my thought.
I mean, I agree with that, but I also would like to have a discussion about it and have a little time to formulate our thoughts.
I'm throwing that out tonight, not to make a decision
Do
tonight.
you want to put it on the next agenda?
Sure.
I think that would be
Just have a discussion,
Sure.
and then what I'll ask Christina to do is inform applicants that the board at this point is going to have a discussion. They're not going to accept any applications at this time, because that's how frantic it is. I mean, she's up to her neck with license renewals, as we know, this time of the year. But she's like receiving a lot of communication regarding that additional license. And I think what would help me at this point is what we can say in the office
We're gonna
is,
discuss
the board's
what the
going to discuss
process
it,
will
but at this
be.
point, the board is not accepting any applications until it decides how it's going to accept licenses. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That's my report for this evening. I do have two quick appointments for your consideration for confirmation. That is for Recycling Committee, Cheryl Loeffler for 1-year term expiring June 30th, 2022. And then the Parade Committee, John Osborne, who chaired the committee the last 2 years, has decided that he does in fact want to remain on the committee. So I would ask his confirmation through July 31st next year.
I have a question.
Sure.
On the one with Cheryl Lawfer for
Yeah.
the Recycling Committee. So Kristen Champagne's application for the Fire Station Committee also said she was interested in the Tree Committee and the Recycling Committee. And the Recycling Committee has 1 opening, and I think the Tree Committee has more than 1 right now. So what is our intent there?
I think the recycling, I think I'll reach out to Kristen and ask her what committee she wants to be on. I'm willing to add another member to the recycling committee, because as we know from the past, the recycling committee is willing to take new members, and so I will do
So
that.
we're not capped?
No,
So you
that's a
can
local
reach out
committee.
to Kristen
Yep,
and
I will
find
do
out
that.
where her stronger interest is
Yep.
between recycling and tree?
Yep.
And then we'll address that at the next meeting?
Or both.
Or both, yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
take both.
Okay.
We have people on 2 more than one.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's true. I'm sorry, I was
They want
like,
to get involved, you don't want to
Yep.
turn them away.
okay.
All right, thank
Oh,
you.
is she on?
Well, yeah, but it's not on the agenda
Oh,
to
okay.
discuss it with her, so.
Okay.
So we need a motion.
Yeah, if you could confirm those 2 appointments to the,
Do you want it by name or just as presented? I'll make a motion to approve Cheryl Loeffler to the Recycling Committee for a 1-year term.
I'll second the motion.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
I'll make a motion to approve John Osborne to the Parade Committee for a 1-year term.
I second the motion.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. And I believe that brings us to agenda item 13, which is meeting minutes.
Any comments?
Are there any other, before we get the motion, any comments? Everybody good? Go ahead, Ken.
Make a motion to approve the August 23rd, 2021 regular meeting minutes.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Do you have one more second?
Yep, I'm just getting there. I'll make a motion to approve the regular session meeting minutes from September 7th, 2021.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. The next thing we have to do is, number 14, is to assign a Select Board Liaison to the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee. Do we have anyone who wants that or wants to make a nomination?
I'm still interested.
I was going to say I am too, but I'll let Pat take it if she would like. And I'll just go to the meetings.
Okay. You okay with that?
My wife yelled at me.
Hmm?
My wife yelled at me.
When you were interested?
Too many.
Yeah, she said too many.
Well, I'm not taking this one, so.
So you tricked me into doing that, is that it?
Yep. I got you.
You did.
All right, would you like to make a motion then, Ken?
I'll make a motion
Oh,
to
does anybody else want it?
Well, I mean, that's just a
appointment. It's a
chair.
liaison.
Oh, that's just me?
Yeah, that's just your appointment.
Okay, then I will appoint Pat Wojcik, I can't pronounce your name anymore, as the Select Board Liaison to the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That brings us to liaison reports and referrals. Pat?
Yeah, a couple of things. Last week, I attended another ribbon cutting up in Drum Hill for the new Starbucks that opened there. It was good to see other members of the board, and they had a good crowd, and somebody's even advertising for them right now. So hope everybody gets enough of their coffee. We have plenty of coffee shops, especially up in Drum Hill. So congratulations to Starbucks. Last week I attended the Massachusetts Water Works annual meeting, during which they made their Legislator of the Year award, and that award went to Representative Jim Arcero, who also represents part of Chelmsford. So congratulations to Jim on that award. And I noticed on Facebook today that the walk before the day before Thanksgiving, the walk on the day before Thanksgiving, is going to be held this year. Starts at the walk kicks off at 2 o'clock at the end of Janet Road at Thanksgiving Forest. It's always a good event, and there's usually, Becky Warren or another historian will be there to tell some things about Chelmsford that none of us ever knew before. A good event, day before Thanksgiving, 2 p.m., Janet Road. That's it.
Thank you. George?
Said thank you.
Mark?
I'll just mention that I attended, I know others did as well, the Veterans Day celebration that we had at the memorial, and it was very well done, and I was really surprised at how well attended it was as well. So kudos to the whole team that put that together.
Thank you. Ken?
Yeah, I just have one announcement to make. So I was contacted by the temple here in Chelmsford. Families and young children are invited to a special Hanukkah Story Lantern Walk on Sunday, December 5th at 4 p.m. at Sunny Meadow Farms on Robin Hill Road here in Chelmsford. You'll be able to design your own lantern, hot chocolate stations and treats, and there's the Hanukkah Story Walk. They're going to have giveaways. They'll be singing. It's free to all who come. All are welcome. You can register at thelapinfoundation.org, and if you have any questions, you can reach out at Rachel's, there's an S at the end, at lapinfoundation.org.
Thank you. I just have two. The Capital Planning Committee has their first meeting this Thursday, November 18th. They're going to hear reports and hearings on municipal technology, the town clerk, the library, fire department, and the Department of Public Works. And future dates for the Capital Planning Committee are December 2nd, 9th, and December 16th is a backup if needed. From the school committee, Paul Cohen and I attended their second public input session on school facilities last week, and they've asked me to announce that they'll be discussing some of the findings from their meeting tomorrow at their school committee meeting tomorrow evening, November 16th. I don't see any press, so I will take a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss the settlement pertaining to 85 High Street litigation and strategy with respect to the opioid class action litigation, and we will be returning to open session.
We will?
Yes,
Oh, I didn't know that.
correct?
Yes, in order to sign the
Yeah.
settlement documents.
So it's 8:04. For the public, the select board is going to go into another room for executive session. Chelmsford Telemedia will keep this stream and the Zoom stream open if anybody is waiting for us to come back to open session. And we will come back to this room for open session when we're done with executive session.
We need to take a vote and have a second.
Need a roll
and
call
take a
vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a motion. Roll call vote. Oh, do we have a second?
Second?
Okay. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you, and sorry about that. Telemedia, we'll do 5 seconds. Okay, it is 8:17 PM on November 15th, and I am calling the rejoining of the open session of the Chelmsford Select Board back to order. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the settlement for the litigation between the town of Chelmsford and 85 High Street, Chelmsford, Mass.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Do we have another motion?
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. It is 8:18 PM. Thank you, everyone.